horrible. It's disgusting. Okay. Right. Hi. Yeah. No, doing this is so undignified. This, horrific at a camera. It's awful. But it's another Monday. We're back here again on the floor of the living room. And the window is open, so maybe you're hearing the one siren that's passed all day. But that's okay. We're just gonna roll with it. I wanted to talk about something that I've been noodling on pretty much every day of existing, I would say. That might be a bit hyperbolic there, but not by much, honestly. So I want to talk a bit about how terrifying it is to look people in the eye, which might be a very Gen Z thing to say, but I think mainly what I'm trying to get at here is like, why does that feel so harmful? Especially for someone like me that always really wants connection and really enjoys having genuine connections with people. And I think that obviously starts by, the very basic, which is eye contact. So, and what I mean specifically is like, I have social skills. I can be out in the world and look at people, but what I'm talking about is like when you're walking by someone, like out in public, just I do a lot of things on my own, and so as I'm walking through the world, I have noticed this feeling of tension in myself that's like a bit of friction in wanting to look strangers in the eye and smile, and feeling incredibly self-conscious about that. And I think there are a number of reasons why, or I guess a number of ingredients to that. But ultimately, I'm trying to work with this question, tackle this question of like, how can we get past that? And I think how my brain works is like, well, to get past something, I want to understand why it's there. And so those are the ingredients that I am trying to talk about today. So I think one of them, for me, that comes up a lot is fear. As a small young woman going about the world, that can be really tricky. And I think that I definitely noticed a difference, or sort of maybe like an increase in this feeling post-pandemic. I think that's pretty common. I think a lot of people feel some kind of social anxiety if they didn't already beforehand, or found that it worsened quite a bit. I would say for some reason that doesn't feel like it fits, like that description doesn't fit what I'm feeling. It doesn't feel quite like social anxiety necessarily, but maybe something a bit deeper, more sinister, who knows. And I realize I'm using a lot of really strong words, but that's exactly how it feels in my body. So my mind might know that that's sort of foolish to say, that it feels sinister to look a stranger in the eye, but my body feels it that way. And so I think that maybe getting to the nuance of what's, maybe a social anxiety versus maybe something else, or maybe it's all part of the same umbrella and it doesn't really matter what name you put on it. I don't know, but maybe this investigation might help. So I find myself feeling really tense about that. So kind of this aspect of the fear of harm, or maybe the adjacent fear of offending someone. I think back to a story of when I was in college and I was getting off of the bus and I saw this girl getting off the bus as well. She was on crutches, but wearing a dress. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever tried to walk around on crutches, but it sort of rides up whatever you're wearing. And so, of course, this poor girl's dress was riding up, and I had made eye contact with her and she seemed really upset about that. And I was trying to get her attention to let her know that she might want to adjust her dress a little bit. And she got really upset when I pointed that out to her, and was not here for that. So that, of course, is like one tiny experience, and I wouldn't even say that contributes to the way I'm feeling now. I think that's like, whatever, you might get all sorts of reactions to all sorts of things. But it's something that I feel like somewhat encapsulates the thought that I'm trying to express here. So in any case, I think that's one ingredient, and probably the biggest ingredient is just like the fear of offending someone, but also opening the door to be uncomfortable, to be put in an uncomfortable position. And what I mean by that specifically is there have been so many times, obviously, that, you know, people interpret the signal of eye contact as like an invitation to be, I don't know, in your space, or like just do some uncomfortable stuff. I think especially as a young woman. And so I think my solution to that for so long was just like, well, then just don't make eye contact. If you don't make eye contact, then no one can bother you, which of course we know is not even true, but it's like the idea, I guess, is might lessen that, the incidence rate, I suppose. And this is the kind of thing you hear a lot when you move to cities and things like that, or if you live in cities, it's like, you don't make eye contact with people on public transportation, and you don't make, you know, there's just like, you just know this, right? Like, my sister lived in New York for a million years, and that's like one of the first things I remember people telling her when she first moved over there is like, you don't look at anyone on the subway, don't make eye contact, don't this and that and the other, in the streets, you know, whatever, all of this. And I just think a lot about how that's affected my brain and the way that I conceptualize people around me, especially in public, right, in big spaces, outside of my apartment, outside of my one circle of friends. And I think that's something that's been really interesting in these last few years of noodling through this feeling and watching it come up a lot, is that in as many ways as opening the door to someone is kind of scary, and it obviously is also the only way that you make new connections and that you get to talk to new people and you get to have new experiences, right? And so I thought a lot about, well, what are some quote unquote safer spaces to sort of practice this idea or exercise this muscle. And I found two spots to do this in. One was social dancing. I love salsa dancing. I love any dancing really, but I really, really, really do love salsa dancing. And that for some reason has gotten really, really popular lately. And by lately, I mean maybe like the last, I don't know, 4 years or so. And I think that's been really nice because there are more spaces for younger folks, older folks, all sorts of different ages to kind of be in the same space. And also with that added component of sort of like perhaps a physical intimacy as well, right? You're dancing. And so that can bring about a lot of anxiety too. It certainly did for me, but I thought it was really nice because it sort of contextualizes the skill, right? The skill of you're meeting a new person. There's an etiquette, for example, in this case to dancing, right? There's an etiquette to this. There's a social contract in place that sort of like acts as the guardrails, if you will, to the social interaction you're about to have. And I think that really helped. And the second place that I feel like I was able to, and still am able to exercise this muscle is in run clubs. I don't think this is a new concept to anyone. I think they've like popped off in popularity in the last few years, especially I think post-pandemic. For the record, I ran before that, but I think it's really interesting that they have gotten so many people to be a part of these places, especially when running like objectively for a lot of people is miserable. I've grown to like it quite a lot over the last like 5 or 6 years. But in run clubs, as with a lot of spaces that you just kind of walk into as a new person, learning a new skill, you, if you want to make friends, have to be very open, like in your body, in your face, eye contact, in how you participate in conversations. And I feel like that really taught me over time, maybe not even consciously, but over time, to look at people as possibilities again and look at people as like people again, instead of like, you know, again, to use kind of strong language, like potential threats, which sounds horrible, but I think we have to name things in order to like really pass them through, you know? But I think that experience in both of these spaces has really added, I think, more data to the file that is like the fear that I was mentioning earlier, and just add like more interactions to this file from which my brain can pull to prepare for another interaction or like the context that it'll sit on. And so I found myself after so many years in these sort of dance or run kind of environments feeling like I get to look at people more. And that sounds silly, that sounds like such a small detail, but I think it's one of the things that matter the most, because if you're always avoiding people, if you're always avoiding eye contact, you're always avoiding having an interaction, it's no wonder why you feel like you're not a part of the world around you, you know? And I think that's ultimately what sort of kicked this realization into place in my brain of like why this matters to me, and why it's so important to keep in mind to, you know, if and when you can, wherever possible, you know, push yourself a little bit, encourage yourself to step out and into something that makes you feel a little weird, but it's okay to do the baby steps, right? To do the little things to get you there, whether it's joining some small clubs or bringing a friend with you already, but just making sure to remind yourself that the world is so much bigger than what your brain makes it out to be. And so I've really enjoyed being able to look at people like possibilities and not as like, you know, I don't know, just already pigeonholing them as like something that could hurt or something that could make me uncomfortable. And also with that understanding that even if the situation does turn to be something uncomfortable, I have all the tools I need to get out of it if I want to, you know, within reason, of course. So yeah, I'd love to know if this is something that y'all have dealt with, maybe if there was like a clear difference before or during or after the pandemic for you, or maybe there wasn't, or maybe this is still something you're dealing with, or maybe you've never dealt with it. But I'd love to know what was maybe something that has really helped you in this kind of thought and feeling of breaking out of what your brain tells you is the truth about something around you. I know that's very broad, but we can keep it to meeting new people and seeing folks on the street, and just those little interactions that I find really make the difference in like feeling connected to the world, and how we can be a bit more open to that. If that means eye contact, if that means taking off headphones, if that means, you know, going for a walk instead of staying in, whatever that looks like, I'd love to hear it. So thanks for spending another Monday with me. I will see you next week.